Picture this: a vast fertile plain nestled between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, where the sun scorches the earth and the waters bring life in abundance, transforming what is now southern Iraq into a cradle of human ingenuity. This is the stage where the Sumerians made their dramatic entrance around 4500 BCE, stepping out from the mists of prehistory to ignite the spark of what we recognize as the very first civilization. But who exactly were these trailblazers? And how did they evolve from humble farmers scratching a living from the soil to architects of sprawling cities that would echo through the ages, influencing everything from our calendars to our concepts of kingship? To really grasp their story, we need to rewind a bit further, to the Ubaid period starting around 6500 BCE, named after the archaeological site Tel al-Ubaid, where layers of ancient pottery and tools first hinted at this early chapter. These Proto-Sumerians were pioneers in settling down, taming the wild landscape by domesticating animals like sheep for wool, goats for milk, cattle for labor and meat, and even experimenting with pigs and dogs for companionship and utility. Their crops were the backbone of survival: barley for bread and beer, wheat for sustenance, dates from palm trees for sweetness, and lentils, chickpeas, onions, and garlic adding flavor and nutrition to their diets. What made this possible was their clever mastery over water. They dug simple canals and ditches to redirect the river's floods, turning unpredictable deluges into reliable irrigation that turned swamps and deserts into lush farmlands capable of supporting growing communities. This wasn't just about feeding mouths. It triggered a cascade of changes, a population explosion as families grew larger with steady food supplies, freeing some people from constant foraging to specialize in crafts, trade, and even early forms of governance. Fast forward to the Uruk period, from about 4000 to 3100 BCE, and the Sumerians were hitting their stride. Uruk itself ballooning into the world's inaugural metropolis, covering over 250 hectares with mud brick walls enclosing temples, markets, and homes for perhaps 50,000 souls. A staggering number when most of humanity was still huddled in tiny villages of a few dozen. Innovation was their hallmark. They didn't just invent the wheel for pottery wheels to shape clay into uniform pots and jars with speed and precision, but soon adapted it to carts and chariots, revolutionizing how goods moved across lands and how armies could charge into battle. Their plows, yoked to oxen, sliced through the earth more efficiently, allowing larger fields and surplus harvests that could be stored in granaries against lean times. And on the waters, their reed boats evolved into sail-powered vessels, navigating the twisting rivers and daring the open waves of the Persian Gulf to connect with distant cultures, bringing back exotic treasures that fueled further creativity. But if there's one invention that truly set them apart, it's writing. Emerging around 3500 BCE as pictographic symbols pressed into soft clay tablets with reed styluses, initially for mundane record-keeping, tallying barley rations, livestock, counts, or trade deals to prevent disputes in a bustling society. Over centuries, this system blossomed into cuneiform, wedge-shaped marks that could capture complex ideas, from royal decrees to poetic hymns, making the Sumerians the first to preserve their thoughts for posterity. Scribes became elite professionals, enduring rigorous training in Aduba schools, where boys, and sometimes girls, memorized thousands of signs, practiced on clay, and learned to compose letters, contracts, and literature that would outlast empires. Their mathematical prowess was equally astounding, opting for a base 60 system that divided time into 60-second minutes and 60-minute hours, circles into 360 degrees, and enabled precise calculations for astronomy, architecture, and commerce, influences we still feel today every time we check a clock or measure an angle. Society structured itself around autonomous city-states, each a self-contained world orbiting a central ziggurat. These massive stepped towers of baked bricks rising like artificial mountains, dedicated to patron gods and serving as both spiritual beacons and administrative centers where priests orchestrated the economy, managing temple lands that produced vast wealth through organized labor. Kings, known as Lugals or Ensis, rose to power, often starting as military leaders in times of crisis, claiming legitimacy through divine favor, their palaces adjoining temples to blur the lines between earthly and heavenly rule. The social pyramid was steep. At the apex sat the priestly class and nobility, wielding influence over rituals and resources. Below them, scribes and bureaucrats kept the wheels turning. Artisans crafted exquisite jewelry from gold and lapis lazuli. Merchants bartered in bustling souks. Farmers toiled in the fields under the relentless sun. And at the base were laborers and slaves, many captured in raids or bound by debt, providing the muscle for grand projects. Women navigated this world with surprising agency. They could inherit property, engage in business as brewers or weavers, divorce under certain conditions, and rise to prominence as priestesses, the most famous being Enheduanna, daughter of the Akkadian conqueror Sargon, who penned deeply personal hymns to Inanna, making her the earliest named author in history, her words blending devotion with raw emotion. Everyday existence pulsed with the river's ebb and flow. Homes were modest rectangles of sun-dried mud bricks, with central courtyards for cooking over open fires, flat roofs for evening gatherings under star-filled skies, and reed mats for sleeping. Diets were hearty, flatbreads dipped in lentil stews, fish from the rivers grilled or dried, fruits like figs and pomegranates for dessert, all washed down with beer fermented from barley. So integral it was used as currency for wages. Safer and more nutritious than untreated water, leisure brought music from lyres adorned with bullheads, as seen in the royal standard of Ur, a mosaic artifact depicting banquets with harpists and dancers, alongside grim war scenes of chariots trampling foes. Trade networks spider-webbed outward. Since Sumer was resource-poor in metals and wood, they exported surplus grain, wool textiles dyed in vibrant colors, and finely wrought pottery, importing copper from the Arabian Peninsula, tin from distant Anatolia to forge bronze, cedar logs from Lebanon for beams, and shimmering lapis lazuli from Afghanistan for royal adornments. These exchanges not only built wealth but cross-pollinated ideas, from artistic motifs to technological tweaks. Yet, woven into this tapestry of progress is the enduring enigma known as the Sumerian problem. How did they leap so far ahead so quickly, with no obvious antecedents, their language a unique isolate, unrelated to Indo-European or Semitic families, hinting at deep roots or mysterious migrations from the Zagros Mountains, or even the Arabian steppes? Some theories suggest climatic shifts around 5000 BCE drew diverse groups to the Fertile Crescent, blending knowledge in a melting pot of innovation, while others ponder lost chapters drowned by rising seas or buried under silt. The environment was both boon and bane. Annual floods replenished soils but could rage destructively, inspiring engineering feats like levees and reservoirs, and embedding in their psyche tales of cataclysmic deluges that would morph into global flood myths. Archaeology paints vivid pictures. Sites like Eridu, mythically the first city founded by the god Enki, reveal layers of temples stacked over millennia, each rebuilding grander than the last. In Ur, Leonard Woolley's 1920s excavations uncovered the royal tombs, opulent graves filled with golden helmets, dagger hilts inlaid with electrum, and the haunting death pits where attendants were buried alive with their rulers, perhaps willingly, in ritual sacrifice, clutching harps and game boards for the afterlife. Technological jumps abound. The shift to bronze around 3000 BCE ushered in the early dynastic period, with stronger tools for farming and deadlier weapons for conflict, as city-states like Kish, Umma, and Lagash vied for dominance over water, canals, and borderlands. Wars were frequent and fierce, armies of helmeted spearmen marching in phalanx formations, slingers hurling stones, and chariots drawn by onagers thundering across plains. Victories commemorated on monuments like the Stele of the Vultures, where King Eannatum of Lagash boasts of piling enemy corpses into mounds while vultures feast. Amid the clamor of battle and barter, religion infused every moment. The Sumerians viewed the universe as a divine household where gods lounged in luxury, humans mere servants tasked with providing food, clothing, and entertainment through labor, and offerings, Temples buzzed with activity, priests in elaborate robes performing ablutions, chanting incantations, and sacrificing rams or doves to appease volatile deities who could unleash storms or plagues on a whim. Omens were obsessively sought. In the entrails of animals via extispicy, the patterns of oil on water, or the positions of stars, guiding decisions from planting seasons to declaring war. Festivals punctuated the year. The Akitu New Year rite, in spring, involved purifying the city, parading god statues through streets amid crowds, and reenacting cosmic battles to ensure fertility and order. As we immerse ourselves in this ancient world, it's evident the Sumerians weren't merely survivors. They were visionaries who wove the fabric of civilization from threads of necessity and wonder, their legacies in lore, literature, and law still shaping our modern existence. But to unlock the heart of their culture, we must ascend to the realm of their gods, the pantheon that animated their myths and mysteries. As we ascend from the bustling streets and fertile fields of Sumer to the ethereal heights of their beliefs, we enter a realm where gods walked among men, not as distant abstractions, but as vivid, powerful beings who shaped every aspect of existence. Sumerian mythology wasn't just a collection of stories told around flickering fires. It was the very framework of their universe, a cosmic drama that explained the chaos of nature, the cycles of life and death, and humanity's place in a grand, often unforgiving design. At the core of this worldview was a profound polytheism, a belief in countless deities who personified the forces of the world, from the gentle flow of rivers to the fury of storms, each god as temperamental and relatable as a family member in a sprawling household. The Sumerians envisioned the cosmos as a tripartite structure, heaven above ruled by An, the sky father, earth below as Kai, the nurturing mother, and between them, the atmosphere where winds howled under Enlil's command, while beneath it all lurked the shadowy underworld of Ker, a dim, dusty realm where souls lingered in eternal twilight. But these weren't static domains. They pulsed with divine energy, governed by the Me, those sacred decrees or powers that the gods wielded like tools, encompassing everything from kingship and warfare to craftsmanship and sexual allure, essentially the blueprints for civilization itself, handed down from the divine to ensure order in a precarious world. Leading this pantheon was An, the supreme god of the heavens, distant and majestic, often depicted as a bull or a starry crown. He was the ultimate authority, though he delegated much of the day-to-day ruling to his son Enlil, the lord of air, and storms, a forceful deity whose breath could summon tempests or grant fertility to the lands, but whose wrath might flood entire cities if displeased. Enlil's decisions were final in the assembly of gods, making him a figure of both reverence and fear. His temple at Nippur serving as the spiritual heart of Sumer, where kings sought his blessings for victory or prosperity. Then there's Enki, the clever god of fresh waters, wisdom, and magic, often shown with fish scales or streams flowing from his shoulders. He was the trickster and benefactor, the one who outwitted foes with cunning rather than brute force, credited with organizing the world, teaching humans arts like brewing and building, and even saving mankind from destruction in flood tales. His counterpart in passion and power was Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and fertility, a multifaceted force who embodied the thrill of battle and the ecstasy of romance. Her symbols the lion and the eight-pointed star. She descended to the underworld in one famous myth, stripping away her regalia at 7 gates, dying and reviving to teach lessons of renewal and the cycles of seasons. Lesser but no less vital gods filled out the family. Utu, the sun god, dispenser of justice with his saw-edged rays cutting through deceit. Nana, the moon god, serene and cyclical, overseeing time and calendars from his ziggurat in Ur. Ninhursag, the earth mother, midwife to creation. And Nidaba, the goddess of writing in grains, patroness of scribes with her stylus in hand. These deities weren't aloof. They quarreled, loved, and schemed like humans, their stories captured in epic poems that scribes etched onto clay, blending divine antics with moral teachings. Take the Epic of Gilgamesh, perhaps the oldest great work of literature, following the king of Uruk on his quests for fame and immortality, befriending the wild man Enkidu created by the gods to humble him, battling monsters like Humbaba in cedar forests, and confronting the bull of heaven sent by a spurned Inanna, only to grapple with loss and the futility of defying death after Enkidu's demise, ultimately learning wisdom from the flood survivor, Utnapishtim, a tale that echoes through later myths like those of Hercules or Noah. Creation stories abounded too. In one, the gods molded humans from clay mixed with divine blood to relieve themselves of toil, fashioning us as servants to till the soil and offer sacrifices, a pragmatic origin that underscored humanity's role as caretakers for the divine, with Enki and Ninhursag experimenting in a garden like Dilmun, a paradise free of sickness until curses brought woes like aging. Rituals brought these myths to life, temples hummed with daily offerings, priests washing statues of gods as if they were living beings, feeding them meals of bread, beer, and roasted meats on altars, while incantations warded off demons like the fearsome Lamashtu who preyed on children, or invoked protective spirits through amulets and spells. Divination was an art form. Haruspices examining sheep livers, divided into zones corresponding to cosmic regions, interpreting blemishes as omens from Enlil, or astrologers charting stars from ziggurat tops, believing celestial movements mirrored, divine wills, laying foundations for later Babylonian horoscopes. Festivals wove community bonds. The sacred marriage rites saw kings embodying Dumuzi, Inanna's consort, in unions with priestesses to ensure bountiful harvests, while the Akitu festival in spring reenacted Enlil's victory over chaos, parading god idols through streets amid chants and dances, purifying the land for a new year. Influences rippled outward as Sumerian myths seeped into Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian cultures, with gods renamed but essences preserved. Marduk rising in Babylon's Enuma Elish as a hero, slaying the sea dragon Tiamat to fashion the world. From her corpse, a creation epic that borrowed heavily from Sumerian motifs of order, triumphing over primal disorder. Cross-cultural echoes abound. Inanna's descent mirroring Greek Persephone's underworld journey, or Enki's watery wisdom akin to Egyptian Thoth's inventive scribe role. Even Hindu divas sharing hierarchical assemblies deciding fates. Yet mysteries linger in these tales. Were the gods inspired by real astronomical events, like comets as fiery messengers? Or did they encode forgotten histories of kings deified after death? Scholars debate if the me represented actual technological or social innovations passed down from pre-Sumerian times. Art immortalized them. Cylinder seals rolled over clay to imprint scenes of gods feasting or heroes wrestling lions, votive statues with wide eyes staring eternally in prayer, and massive reliefs on palace walls depicting divine processions. Literature flourished beyond epics. Hymns like those of Enheduanna praised Inanna's might, blending personal devotion with cosmic scope, while proverbs captured godly wisdom in bite-sized morals, like warnings against hubris lest Enlil strike. Udown, in the underworld, ruled by Ereshkigal, Inanna's sister, souls faced judgment not by deeds, but by rituals performed above. A grim eternity of dust-eating shades, unless honored with libations, influencing later concepts of Hades or Sheol. Magic, intertwined with myth, Enki's spells to heal or create, incantation bowls trapping evil spirits, and exorcisms by Ashipu priests driving out illness seen as demonic possession. As seasons turned, myths explained them. Dumuzi's death and revival symbolizing summer's drought and winter's renewal, agricultural cycles personified in godly romances. Through it all, the Sumerians saw humans as clay vessels animated by divine spark, fragile yet essential. Their myths a mirror reflecting fears of flood, famine, and the unknown, while offering hope through ritual and reverence. But among this divine tapestry, one group stands out as particularly enigmatic: the Anunnaki, the celestial council whose decrees bridged heaven and earth, guiding us deeper into the heart of Sumerian wonder. As we delve deeper into the swirling mists of Sumerian lore, one name echoes with an otherworldly resonance: the Anunnaki. those enigmatic figures who bridge the gap between the divine heavens and the mortal earth, whispering secrets that could unravel the very fabric of our understanding of ancient gods. Who were these beings, shrouded in myth yet etched into the clay tablets that have survived millennia? Were they mere metaphors for natural forces, or something far more profound? Perhaps visitors from the stars or deified ancestors whose deeds shaped humanity's dawn. The word Anunnaki itself, derived from Sumerian roots, translates roughly to those of princely blood or those who from heaven to earth came, a phrase that sends chills down the spine when you consider its implications, evoking images of celestial travelers descending upon a primitive world to impose order and creation. In the vast tapestry of Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki aren't just a footnote, they're the starring ensemble, a council of around 50 major gods, sometimes expanded to hundreds when including the lesser Igigi, who functioned as their laborers and servants, much like a divine bureaucracy deciding the fates of worlds from their lofty assembly halls. Picture them gathered in solemn conclave, under the leadership of an Or-Enlil, debating cosmic matters with the gravity of emperors, their decisions rippling down to affect everything from bountiful harvests to devastating floods. These weren't distant, untouchable entities. The Anunnaki were portrayed with human-like qualities, they argued. They plotted. They even rebelled against their own kind, revealing a pantheon alive with drama and intrigue that mirrors our own flawed societies. One of the most captivating tales featuring them is the Atrahasis epic, a gripping narrative preserved on fragmented tablets from around 1800 BCE, though its roots stretch back further into Sumerian oral traditions. Here, the Anunnaki grow weary of toiling in the earth's mines and fields, digging canals and extracting resources under the Igigi's burdensome labor, until the Igigi stage a fiery revolt, burning their tools and besieging Enlil's palace in a cosmic strike that threatens the order of the universe. Enlil, ever the stern enforcer, calls upon an Enki for counsel, and in a stroke of ingenious mercy, Enki proposes creating humanity as a solution, molding the first people from clay moistened with the blood of a slain god, perhaps we Illa, or Geshtui, infusing us with divine essence to bear the workload forevermore. Thus, humans emerge not as beloved children, but as reluctant workers designed to appease the Anunnaki's laziness, an origin story that's both humbling and haunting, reminding us that in ancient eyes, we were tools in a grander scheme. But the drama doesn't end there. As populations swell and humanity's clamor disturbs the gods' rest, Enlil decrees plagues and famines to cull the noise, only for Enki to secretly thwart him each time, whispering survival tips to the wise Atrahasis, until finally, the Great Flood is unleashed, a cataclysm where most Anunnaki weep for the drowning masses. Yet Enki saves a remnant by instructing Atrahasis to build a boat, preserving the seed of life in a tale that prefigures Noah's Ark by centuries. In the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic heavily influenced by Sumerian precursors, the Anunnaki play a pivotal role in the primordial chaos, where the younger gods, led by Marduk, battle the ancient sea goddess Tiamat and her monstrous allies. Marduk, often seen as an evolution of Enlil's stormy might, slays Tiamat with winds and arrows, splitting her body to form the heavens and earth, then assigns the Anunnaki their stations, 300 in the sky as watchful stars, 300 below to guard the underworld's gates, establishing a cosmic harmony from the ashes of war. This myth isn't just spectacle, it underscores the Anunnaki's role as architects of reality, their hierarchical structure mirroring Sumerian society, with great gods like the Anunnaki issuing edicts, while the Igigi, demoted to servants, grumble in the background until humans take their place. Evidence for these beings pours from archaeological treasures, like the thousands of cuneiform tablets unearthed at Nippur, Enlil's sacred city, where lists of gods enumerate the Anunnaki as judges of destiny, or the library of Ashurbanipal, in Nineveh, preserving Akkadian versions that rename them Anunnaku but retain their essence. Scholars like Samuel Noah Kramer, the father of Sumerology, pieced together these fragments in the mid-20th century, translating hymns and incantations that invoke the Anunnaki for protection or curse, revealing them as both benevolent creators and fearsome destroyers. Linguistically, the term evolves. In Sumerian, Anunnaki emphasizes their heavenly descent, while in Akkadian, it shifts to underworld connotations, perhaps reflecting cultural shifts as empires rose and fell. Yet consistently, they're depicted, with horned crowns signifying divinity, winged forms suggesting flight or transcendence, and staffs of authority in art, from cylinder seals to massive stone reliefs. Cross-cultural whispers add layers of mystery, parallels to the Egyptian Ennead, a group of 9 creator gods assembling in Heliopolis to birth the world, or the Greek Titans, elder deities overthrown by Olympians in a generational clash akin to the Anunnaki's internal strife. Even in Hindu lore, the Devas and Asuras wage eternal battles for control, echoing the Anunnaki's cosmic wars, while biblical scholars point to the Nephilim or Elohim as possible echoes, giant offspring of heaven's sons mingling with Earth's daughters, fueling debates on whether these were shared archetypes or diffused stories along ancient trade routes. But the Anunnaki's hierarchy intrigues most, divided into the great gods who decree from on high, and the Igigi who execute, until that pivotal rebellion narrated in the Atrahasis, where the Igigi's cries of exhaustion lead to Enki's laboratory, of creation, mixing divine blood with clay in a ritualistic birth attended by birth goddesses, humans emerging crying like newborns, bound to eternal service. This theme recurs in other myths, like the Eridu Genesis, where Enki establishes cities and kingship under Anunnaki oversight, or the Sumerian king list, which claims pre-flood rulers reigned for tens of thousands of years. Perhaps Anunnaki, themselves disguised as mortals, their longevity hinting at immortal beings or exaggerated legends. Artifacts amplify the enigma. Seals from Uruk show Anunnaki-like figures in boats traversing starry skies, or presenting symbols of life to kings, while ziggurats were built as stairways to heaven, platforms for Anunnaki to descend during rituals, blending architecture with mythology. Astronomical ties deepen the puzzle. Some Anunnaki associated with planets, An as Uranus, Enlil as Jupiter, suggesting astral theology, where gods embodied celestial bodies, their movements dictating earthly events, a precursor to astrology that Sumerians pioneered with precise observations. Yet questions swirl. Were the Anunnaki symbolic of natural elements, Enlil the wind, Enki the waters, or did they represent elite priesthoods personified, or even forgotten extraterrestrial visitors as later theorists claim? Their mining motifs evoking quests for gold in Earth's crust. In hymns, they're praised as determiners of fates, their assembly like a celestial court where pleas are heard, as in the lament for Ur, where Anunnaki abandon the city to invaders, weeping as temples crumble. Their duality fascinates creators, who gift civilization yet demand servitude, flooding the world in regret only to rebuild it, a cycle of destruction and renewal that mirrors nature's rhythms. As we ponder these ancient echoes, the Anunnaki stand as timeless enigmas, blurring lines between myth and history, beckoning us to question if our origins lie not in dust, but in the stars, paving the way for modern interpretations that twist these tales into even wilder speculations. As we pivot from the ancient clay tablets whispering of divine counsels to the wild frontiers of modern speculation, imagine if those Anunnaki weren't just gods in metaphor, but flesh and blood visitors from the cosmos, extraterrestrials zipping across the stars in gleaming ships, tampering with our DNA to create a workforce for their interstellar agendas. This isn't some fringe whisper from a late-night podcast. It's the core of ancient astronaut theories, a bold reimagining of human history that exploded into popular culture in the late 20th century, challenging everything from archaeology to religion with claims that our ancestors didn't build civilization alone. They had help from above, or rather, from out there. These ideas suggest that myths like the Anunnaki's descent weren't poetic fables, but garbled memories of real events, aliens mistaken for deities by wide-eyed primitives who couldn't comprehend their technology, theories that have sold millions of books, inspired TV shows like Ancient Aliens, and sparked endless debates in online forums and academic circles alike. At the heart of this whirlwind stands Zecharia Sitchin, a self-taught scholar whose Earth Chronicles series turned Sumerian lore into a sci-fi epic. Born in 1920 in Azerbaijan and raised in Palestine before settling in New York, Sitchin wasn't your typical academic. He studied economics and journalism, but his passion for ancient languages led him to dive into cuneiform texts, claiming to uncover hidden truths that mainstream experts overlooked or suppressed. His breakthrough came in 1976 with The 12th Planet, the first in a series that spanned decades, where he argued that our solar system has an undiscovered 12th planet called Nibiru, a massive world on a 3,600-year elliptical orbit that swings close to Earth every few millennia, causing havoc like pole shifts or floods. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki hailed from this Nibiru, advanced beings facing an environmental crisis, their atmosphere depleting, perhaps from over-industrialization or cosmic rays, so they needed gold, not for jewelry, but to suspend as reflective particles in their skies, a kind of planetary shield. Around 450,000 years ago, he claimed, they arrived on Earth, splash landing in the Persian Gulf, drawn by our planet's abundant gold deposits, especially in Africa. They set up bases in Mesopotamia, which they called Eden, echoing the biblical Eden, and began mining operations. But the work was grueling, even for these superior beings. So after a rebellion among their ranks, much like the Agigi uprising in the myths, their leader, Enki, the scientist of the bunch, proposed a radical fix: genetically engineer a primitive worker by splicing Anunnaki genes with those of early hominids, probably Homo erectus roaming Africa. Boom! Homo sapiens is born, not through slow evolution, but in a lab-like setup, with the first humans, Adamu in Sumerian terms, created to toil in the mines, relieving the Anunnaki of their burdens. Sitchin pointed to Sumerian texts like the Atrahasis epic as literal blueprints, interpreting the clay and divine blood mixture as DNA manipulation, Enki as a geneticist using test tubes instead of magic, and the Garden of Eden as an experimental enclave where these new humans were tested and bred. He didn't stop there, the Anunnaki, he said, stuck around for hundreds of thousands of years, teaching humans agriculture, metallurgy, and city building, establishing the first civilizations in Sumer around 4000 BCE, their long lifespans, due to Nibiru's orbit or advanced medicine, explained the Sumerian king list's absurd reigns, like kings ruling for 28,000 years. Not myths, but Anunnaki hybrids or the aliens themselves posing as rulers. Flying chariots in the epics became spaceships, ziggurats as landing platforms, or communication towers beaming signals home, and cylinder seals depicting winged figures weren't artistic flourishes, but accurate sketches of astronauts in flight, suits, or anti-gravity gear. Sitchin wove in global connections too, claiming the Anunnaki influenced Egypt, where Ra or Osiris were their avatars, the Mayans with their precise calendars hinting at Nibiru's cycle, even the Bible's Nephilim as Anunnaki offspring mingling with human women, producing giants whose tales persist in folklore worldwide. His books, like The Stairway to Heaven or The Wars of Gods and Men, delved into these interstellar conflicts, Anunnaki factions battling over Earth resources, using nukes that left radioactive scars in places like the Sinai Peninsula, explaining biblical Sodom and Gomorrah as atomic blasts, or the Indus Valley's mysterious end around 1900 BCE. What made Sitchin's ideas so magnetic was his blend of scholarship and storytelling. He cited NASA data on planetary anomalies, like Uranus's tilted axis as evidence of Nibiru's gravitational tug, and ancient astronomy, Sumerians knowing about. Distant planets like Neptune, long before telescopes, must be insider knowledge from the Anunnaki. His followers see patterns everywhere, from DNA's double helix mirroring Enki's serpentine symbols, to gold's historical value as a nod to its extraterrestrial importance. And with over a dozen books, including posthumous collections like the Anunnaki Chronicles edited by his niece Janet Sitchin, his legacy endures, fueling conventions, documentaries, and even music. Think bands referencing Nibiru in lyrics, or artists depicting Anunnaki in murals. But hold on, because as thrilling as this cosmic saga sounds, It's met with a storm of skepticism from the scientific community, who dismiss it as pseudoscience built on shaky foundations. Critics like Michael Heiser, a biblical scholar fluent in ancient languages, tore into Sitchin's translations, arguing he mangled Sumerian and Akkadian words. For instance, Anunnaki simply means princely offspring, or heaven-earth ones, not spacemen from Nibiru, which Sitchin invented by misreading Nibiru as a planet when it actually meant a crossing point or ferry in Mesopotamian astronomy, often referring to Jupiter or a star. Heiser's website and books, like The Unseen Realm, highlight how Sitchin ignored context, turning poetic metaphors into literal tech, like Shem meaning name or reputation, not rocket, as Sitchin claimed. Astronomers pile on too. NASA has repeatedly stated there's no evidence for a rogue planet like Nibiru. Infrared surveys like WISE would have spotted it if it existed, and its supposed orbit would destabilize the solar system, flinging planets into chaos, yet everything's stable. Archaeological heavyweights, such as those from the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, point out that Sumerian advancements, while impressive, stem from human ingenuity, gradual evolution from Ubaid cultures, not alien handouts, no artifacts, show advanced tech, no spaceship remnants in digs, just mud bricks and bronze tools fitting the era. Videos like David Miano's World of Antiquity series on YouTube debunk specific claims, explaining cylinder seals as religious iconography, winged discs as solar symbols, not UFOs, and the king lists long reigns as symbolic or scribal errors, common in ancient records to legitimize dynasties. Even the genetic angle crumbles under scrutiny. Modern DNA studies trace Homo sapiens back 300,000 years through natural evolution, with no sudden jumps indicating tampering. Fossils show gradual changes, not a lab creation. Broader ancient astronaut theories, kickstarted by Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods in 1968, face similar takedowns. Von Daniken claimed Egyptian pyramids or Nazca lines as alien airstrips, but engineers demonstrate how ancients used ramps, levers, and manpower, no anti-gravity needed. And critics like Carl Sagan in Cosmos argued these ideas undermine human achievement, bordering on racist by implying non-European cultures couldn't innovate without outside help. Shows like Ancient Aliens amplify the hype with dramatic reenactments, but fact-checkers from Skeptic magazine or the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry dismantle them episode by episode, noting cherry-picked evidence and ignored contradictions. Yet these theories persist. Why? Because they tap into our love for mystery, filling gaps in history with wonder, especially in an era of UFO disclosures and space exploration, with figures like Giorgio Tsoukalos memifying the alien angle. Sitchin's work, despite flaws, sparked interest in real Sumerology, drawing people to museums and texts they might otherwise ignore. In the end, whether you see the Anunnaki as starfaring engineers or masterful myths, these ideas force us to question our past, blending science fiction with archaeology in a way that's undeniably captivating. But to ground this flight of fancy, let's turn to the tangible treasures unearthed from the sands, the archaeological wonders that continue to puzzle and inspire, as we ground our journey through myths and theories in the solid earth of discovery. Let's unearth the treasures that archaeologists have pulled from the sands of time, relics that whisper secrets of the Sumerians and fuel endless debates about their world, from opulent tombs brimming with gold to enigmatic artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient ingenuity. Picture the sun-baked plains of southern Iraq in the 1920s, where British archaeologist Leonard Woolley, armed with brushes and trowels, led a joint expedition from the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania Museum, descending into the ruins of Ur, one of Sumer's most illustrious city-states, a place where kings once ruled and gods were said to dwell. Over 12 seasons, from 1922 to 1934, Woolley's team uncovered a sprawling cemetery with nearly 1,850 graves. But the real jaw-dropper was the royal tombs, 16 elite burials dating back to around 2600 to 2400 BCE. During the early dynastic period, these weren't just simple pits. They were elaborate chambers stocked with riches that rivaled the pharaoh's hoards. Imagine descending a ramp into a vault where skeletons lay in ritual poses, surrounded by headdresses of gold leaves and lapis lazuli beads. Silver helmets shaped like eagles, and daggers with hilts inlaid with electrum, a blend of gold and silver that gleamed under torchlight. One standout was the tomb of Queen Puabi, a high priestess or perhaps a ruler in her own right. Her remains adorned with a cloak of thousands of carnelian and lapis beads, a golden headdress towering with floral motifs, and beside her, the infamous death pits, where attendants, musicians, and guards were buried alive or perhaps poisoned in a mass sacrifice, their bodies arranged in orderly rows with harps and lyres at hand, as if ready to play eternal tunes for their queen in the afterlife. Woolley described it as a scene of eerie calm, with one female skeleton still clutching a silver headband, her final act frozen in time. Among the artifacts, the Standard of Ur stole the show, a wooden box inlaid with shell, lapis, and red limestone mosaics, depicting scenes of war on one side, chariots crushing enemies and prisoners paraded before a king, and peace on the other. Banquets with lyre players and dancers. It's like a snapshot of Sumerian society, showing their military prowess and love of feasting. And those lyres, bull-headed instruments with strings of gut, one even reconstructed to play haunting melodies. That echo across millennia. But Ur wasn't alone in yielding wonders. Head north to Nippur, the religious hub dedicated to Enlil, where excavations in the late 1800s and beyond revealed temple libraries stacked with thousands of cuneiform tablets. These clay archives held everything from administrative records to hymns and myths, including fragments of the Atrahasis epic, offering glimpses into how the Sumerians documented their divine interactions and daily dealings. Further south, Eridu emerges as perhaps the oldest city, founded around 5400 BCE. According to legend by Enki himself, recent digs have peeled back layers of temples built atop one another, 18 levels in all, each grander than the last, with the earliest showing simple reed structures evolving into massive mud brick platforms. Artifacts here include the Waka vase from nearby Uruk, a carved alabaster vessel from 3000 BCE depicting a procession to Inanna with offerings of fruits and animals, symbolizing fertility rituals that tied the land's bounty to the god's favor. And don't overlook al-Akarib, a vast cemetery dwarfing Eridu's, with graves hinting at complex burial customs, or the royal tomb's treasures like golden helmets and chariots pulled by oxen, all pointing to a society where death was as lavishly celebrated as life. Yet these finds aren't just pretty relics. They brim with enigmas that keep scholars up at night. Take the Sumerian king list, inscribed on prisms and tablets from sites like Kish and Larsa, a chronicle blending myth and history that lists kings ruling before and after a great flood. The pre-flood antediluvian kings supposedly reigned for staggering spans, like Alulim of Eridu for 28,800 years, or Enmenluana for 43,200, totaling 241,200 years for 8 monarchs. Then after the deluge, reigns shortened to more plausible lengths, like Gilgamesh at 126 years. This mix of fantastical longevity and real historical figures, cross-referenced with archaeology, suggests the list was a tool to legitimize rulers by linking them to divine ancestors. But why the impossible numbers? Were they symbolic, tied to base 60 math, where years represented cycles or scribal exaggerations to glorify the past, or hints at lost knowledge? Perhaps Anunnaki hybrids with extended lives, as some theorists whisper. Speaking of math, the Sumerians' base 60 system powered their astronomy, with ziggurats like Ur's Great One, restored today but originally rising 70 feet in 3 tiers, aligned to celestial events, its corners pointing to solstices and equinoxes. The moon's rise and set, especially honoring Nana, the moon god, whose temple crowned the top. Colors on the stages might have corresponded to planets, black for Saturn, at the base, rising to gold for the sun, turning these structures into cosmic ladders where priests tracked stars from platforms, predicting eclipses and seasons with uncanny precision for their time. Then there's the flood evidence. Woolley himself hit a thick layer of clean clay silt at Ur, 8 feet deep with no artifacts, sandwiched between cultural layers, dating to around 2900 BCE. Similar deposits at Kish, Shurupak, and other sites suggest a massive local deluge, perhaps from the Euphrates bursting its banks after heavy rains or a storm surge from the Persian Gulf, flooding the flat plains and wiping out settlements. This real catastrophe likely inspired the epic tales of Utnapishtim surviving on his boat, paralleling Noah. But geology shows it was regional, not global, though some link it to the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, a theory positing that around 5600 BCE, rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosporus, flooding a freshwater lake into the salty Black Sea, displacing communities and spreading flood lore southward to Mesopotamia. Could refugees from this cataclysm have carried stories that evolved into Sumerian myths? DNA adds another layer. Modern genetics from ancient remains, like those from pre-pottery Neolithic sites in northern Iraq, show continuity with today's populations. Marsh Arabs in southern Iraq carry Middle Eastern haplogroups tracing back to Sumerian times, with mixtures of local hunter-gatherers, Iranian farmers, and Levantine influences. No sudden alien jumps, but gradual migrations. Yet gaps persist, like the undeciphered proto-cuneiform tablets from Uruk, over 5,000 clay pieces from 3350 BCE, with pictograms for goods and numbers, precursors to full writing. Some symbols still baffle us. Were they just accounting or hidden rituals? Ongoing puzzles include the Ubaid lizardmen figurines, eerie 7,000-year-old statues from Tel el-Ubaid with elongated heads, slit eyes and scaly bodies, humanoid reptiles clutching staffs. Theories range from fertility symbols to depictions of Anunnaki or even extraterrestrial visitors, given their otherworldly look, and the lost city of Arata, mentioned in epics as a rival to Uruk, rich in lapis and gold but never found. Was it mythical or a real trade partner in Iran? Artifacts like the Kish tablet, one of the oldest with proto-writing, or the Baghdad battery, wait, that's Parthian, not Sumerian, but often lumped in debates, a jar with copper and iron that some claim generated electricity for electroplating, though experts say it stored scrolls or held acidic substances. No wires or proof, just another red herring in the quest for ancient tech. Underwater mysteries tease too, with rising seas possibly submerging early coastal sites, hiding origins, and cylinder seals showing winged beings in flight, fueling UFO speculations when viewed through modern lenses. As these pieces puzzle together, from golden lyres singing silent songs to star-aligned towers reaching for the heavens, they paint a civilization both brilliantly human and tantalizingly otherworldly, leaving us to wonder how much more lies buried, waiting to rewrite the legacy of the Sumerians and their Anunnaki overseers. As we sift through the sands of time and the echoes of ancient myths, it's impossible not to trace the rippling legacy of the Sumerians and their Anunnaki across the tapestry of human history, influencing cultures far beyond the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, shaping everything from our religious beliefs to our understanding of the stars. Consider how the Sumerians' innovations didn't vanish with their empire. Instead, they seeped into the conquering Akkadians around 2334 BCE, when Sargon the Great forged the world's first true empire, adopting cuneiform script to record his triumphs, blending Sumerian gods into his pantheon, with Enlil crowning him as rightful ruler, and even Enheduanna, Sargon's daughter, penning hymns that preserved Inanna's fierce glory for generations. This cultural fusion continued with the Babylonians, who elevated Marduk, a minor Sumerian deity, to supreme status in their Enuma Elish, recycling Anunnaki motifs of cosmic battles and creation from chaos. Hammurabi's famous Code of Laws, etched around 1750 BCE, drew directly from Sumerian legal traditions like the Code of Ur-Nammu, emphasizing justice from the gods, an eye for an eye that echoed through Mosaic law in the Bible. Speaking of biblical ties, the Anunnaki's fingerprints seem everywhere in the Old Testament. The Genesis creation story mirroring Sumerian tales of separating heaven and earth, with Enlil's stormy breath akin to Yahweh's spirit hovering over, waters, and the Garden of Eden, or Eden in Sumerian, as a paradise where Enki's wisdom tree tempts humanity, not to mention the flood narrative, where Utnapishtim's ark-building instructions from Enki parallel Noah's divine warning, complete. with birds scouting for dry land. Scholars like those at the University of Chicago argue these parallels stem from Hebrew exiles in Babylon, absorbing Mesopotamian lore during the 6th century BCE captivity, weaving Anunnaki essence into their scriptures. Beyond the Near East, echoes resound in Greek mythology, where Zeus's thunderbolts evoke Enlil's storms, and Prometheus stealing fire for humans mirrors Enki's gift of knowledge, defying higher gods. The Titans' overthrow by Olympians parallels generational strife among the Anunnaki, with Kronos castrating Uranus much like Kumarbi and Hurrian myths, which borrowed from Sumerian sources. Even in India, the Rigveda's Devas assembling to battle Asuras feels like the Anunnaki council deliberating fates, while the epic Mahabharata's flying vimanas and destructive weapons hint at misinterpreted Sumerian flying chariots, perhaps diffused along Silk Road trade routes carrying lapis lazuli and ideas alike. Egyptian connections intrigue too, with the Ennead of Heliopolis, 9 gods creating the world from a watery nun, akin to Enki's abyssal domain, and Osiris's resurrection paralleling Inanna's underworld revival. Though direct links are debated, shared Nile-Euphrates trade might have swapped stories of horned gods and starry afterlives. In the Americas, some speculate wilder ties, like Mayan calendars with base 20 echoes of Sumerian math, or Quetzalcoatl's feathered serpent resembling Enki's watery motifs, but mainstream archaeology attributes these to parallel evolution, not Anunnaki globe-trotting, yet Olmec heads with elongated skulls fuel pseudo-history claims of Mesopotamian migrants. Fast forward to medieval Europe, where alchemy's quest for gold nodded to Anunnaki mining legends. Hermes Trismegistus blending Enki's wisdom with Egyptian Thoth, influencing Renaissance thinkers like Newton, who studied Babylonian astronomy rooted in Sumerian observations. Today, this legacy pulses in pop culture, Gilgamesh inspiring modern epics like The Lord of the Rings with quests for immortality, or video games like Assassin's Creed weaving Anunnaki into alien conspiracies, TV shows like Ancient Aliens amplifying Sitchin's theories to millions, sparking YouTube channels and podcasts debating Nibiru's approach. Literature thrives on it too. H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, drawing from Babylonian chaos monsters like Tiamat, birthing cosmic horror genres, while sci-fi authors like Arthur C. Clarke posit ancient astronauts as progress's spark, echoing Sumerian leaps in tech. Even in language, Sumerian isolates left traces in loanwords, like canal from their irrigation terms, or paradise from paradisa, though that's Persian, rooted in Mesopotamian gardens. Astronomy owes a debt. Our 12-month calendar and zodiac signs stem from Babylonian refinements of Sumerian lunar cycles, tracking planets the Anunnaki embodied, NASA's probes named after Mesopotamian gods like Inanna for Venus missions. In art and architecture, ziggurats inspired step pyramids worldwide, from Mesoamerican Teotihuacan to Indonesian Borobudur, while cylinder seals' intricate scenes influenced engraving techniques through history. Socially, the Anunnaki's hierarchical model mirrored in feudal systems or modern bureaucracies, gods delegating to lesser beings like us, serving elites. Unexplained aspects persist, like the Dogon tribe in Mali knowing about Sirius B, an invisible star. Some claim Anunnaki knowledge, passed via Egypt, though anthropologists cite cultural contamination. Conspiracy circles buzz with Anunnaki bloodlines in royal families or Illuminati, tying to biblical Nephilim as elite hybrids, fueling books like David Ickey's reptilian theories, lizard-like from Ubaid figurines. Environmentally, Sumer's over-irrigation salinized soils, leading to collapse around 2000 BCE, a cautionary tale for today's climate woes. Anunnaki floods as metaphors for ecological hubris. In music, bands like Meshuggah riff on Sumerian themes, or Tool's lyrics invoking Enki's awakening, blending metal with mysticism. Film-wise, Ridley Scott's Prometheus reimagines Anunnaki as engineers seeding life, only to regret it, a direct nod to Atrahasis. As globalization connects us, online communities dissect tablets anew, AI translating cuneiform faster, unveiling lost hymns that might redefine Anunnaki roles. This enduring influence reminds us that the Sumerians didn't just build cities, they constructed the scaffolding of human thought. They're Anunnaki, not confined to dusty ruins, but alive in our questions about origins, destiny, and the stars. A legacy that continues to inspire, provoke, and mystify across millennia. As we wrap up our exploration of the Sumerians and their enigmatic Anunnaki, it's hard not to feel a profound sense of awe at how this ancient civilization, rising from the fertile cradle between the Tigris and Euphrates, laid the very foundations of everything we consider modern society, from the cities we live in to the stories we tell about our place in the cosmos. These people weren't just survivors in a harsh world, they were innovators who harnessed rivers, invented writing, and built towering ziggurats that reached toward the heavens, all while weaving a rich tapestry of myths that blurred the lines between gods and men, creation and catastrophe. The Anunnaki, those princely beings who descended from the stars to shape humanity's fate, stand at the heart of it all. Whether you see them as powerful deities judging from their celestial council, architects of our existence molding us from clay and divine essence, or, in the wilder theories, extraterrestrial visitors engineering our species for their own cosmic needs. We've journeyed through their rise, delved into the pantheon that animated their world, uncovered the roles of these heavenly ones in epic tales of floods and rebellions, scrutinized Sitchin's bold claims of Nibiru and genetic tampering, and marveled at the archaeological gems unearthed from Ur's royal tombs to Nipper's tablet hoards. Each artifact a puzzle piece hinting at unexplained leaps in knowledge, from base 60 math that still ticks in our clocks to flood layers echoing biblical deluges. Yet, for all we've uncovered, so much remains shrouded in mystery. Did the Sumerians truly emerge from nowhere with their advanced ways? Or were they guided by forces beyond our grasp? Do those elongated figurines and starry alignments whisper of lost connections to the Anunnaki? Or are they simply echoes of human imagination, striving to make sense of the unknown? These questions linger like shadows in the desert night, challenging us to rethink our origins. What if those clay tablets hold not just myths, but fragmented truths about visitors from afar, or ancient wisdom we've yet to fully decode? Could our DNA carry traces of divine intervention, or is it all a testament to the boundless creativity of our ancestors? As we ponder these enigmas, remember that history isn't a closed book. It's a living riddle inviting us to dig deeper, to question the stars and the sands alike. If this dive into the Sumerian world and their Anunnaki has left you sleepless with wonder, hit that subscribe button to join our community of curious minds exploring more mysteries of the past. Drop a like if you're hooked on these ancient tales, and share your own theories in the comments below. Do you buy into the ancient astronaut angle, or do you think it's all masterful mythology? Let me know, and stay tuned for our next video, where we'll unravel the threads connecting Babylonian epics to Atlantis legends, perhaps uncovering even more links to these celestial overseers. Until then, keep wondering, keep questioning, because the greatest discoveries might just be waiting in the whispers of the ancients. Good night, and sweet dreams, or should I say, sleepless wonders.